Petworking is presented by Maya Strategy Group, a leading market research and strategy consulting firm, helping clients in the pet care and animal health industries navigate strategic challenges for almost 2 decades.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Petworking. I'm Peter Kenseth, Vice President and Partner at Maya Strategy Group, and I'm here today with Heather Moore, CEO and founder of Pet Centric Health. I'm really excited for today's conversation because if you've been following what we've been focused on a lot lately, it's access to care, and it's the Petworking Angel Fund, and it's keeping families together. And as I've said throughout several of our most recent episodes, this idea of preventing economic euthanasia and surrender doesn't just start and end with the development of an angel fund to help address those situations where there's no other options. We really want to call attention to ways that pet parents can prevent this from ever being an issue in the first place. And one of those things is regular veterinary visits and vet care. We've talked in the past, we've had Dr. Ben Hantler of formerly Heska, now Antec, on the show talking about preventive diagnostics. We've had people on talking about the importance of regular vet visits. The barrier there is that vet care is becoming increasingly more expensive. And while pet insurance, and I'm a huge advocate of pet insurance, can help cover a lot of those expenses, there are flaws in the model. We can get into a lot of areas, whether it's around reimbursement, whether it's around the fact that it doesn't cover pre-existing conditions, which is completely justified, and I understand why that happens, but it also means that if you're not getting pet insurance when you adopt a dog or when you get a dog as a puppy, it's not going to be an effective tool for you. And so that's why I think what Heather has done here, and we're going to get into what Pet Centric Health is and how it's helping to address this gap in care, this access to care. But it's a wellness plan focused on the independent vet channel, and it's providing a means for pet parents to affordably budget and take into account the necessary veterinary treatments that they have. And a lot of pet insurance companies provide wellness plans, but it's, again, based on the reimbursement model. And so if you are prepaying through your vet with Pet Centric Health, and Heather will get more into this, but it can encourage those regular vet visits, those regular vaccinations, those preventatives, whether that's heartworm, flea and tick, things that if you don't have your dog or cat on, could come back to bite you and present you with a much more expensive vet bill down the road. So just like, making sure you're taking your vitamins, getting vaccinated, going to your annual physical, making sure your kids are doing those things, we need to make our fur kids, our fur babies, as pet parents, we need to provide that care for them as well. And that can help avoid a situation where you're staring down a huge vet bill and contemplating things like economic euthanasia or surrender. So with that lengthy intro, I will welcome CEO and founder of Pet Centric Health, Heather Moore, to Petworking. Heather, thank you so much for joining us today. And please tell us a little bit more, if I haven't already stolen your thunder too much already.
No, not at all. Well, first of all, Peter, thanks so much for having me today. I think what you're doing in Petworking and raising awareness on things, particularly concepts, these kind of niche concepts around economic euthanasia and how it feeds into the larger access to care, conversation. It's sad that there needs to be a big platform around education on economic euthanasia and surrender, and how do we help solve these things, but it's a reality. And so appreciate, you having me today and joining and kind of talking a little bit about what we're trying to do from those different areas. How do we improve outcomes? How do we help solve the access question, or play a piece of the solve of the access question, and ultimately try and create a win-win that is for veterinarian and teams and pet parents, because in all of these really challenging situations, so take a economic euthanasia situation, there's two sides there. You have intense emotional fatigue and stress on the veterinarian team and their staff team, but you also have a huge stress and toil as well on the pet parent side. And so, what are the strategies that this industry needs as it evolves so quickly to create more win-wins for pet parents and vets alike? So really kind of what you've talked about in the intro is absolutely where where we focus. So we are only focused in the subscription care plan space. So we help hospitals, veterinarians, mostly independent, build their own subscription care plans, and they're able then to offer them to their pet parents. And the one kind of thing that we could go down a deep conversation about this is, you talked about wellness and you talked about insurance, and I'm with you that there's a big place for insurance. We are not insurance. We're more akin to wellness, but we don't use the word wellness. And part of that is because we build subscriptions that are designed to support kind of the entirety of the continuum of care and primary care. So those are going to be things that are prevention based. I'm with you. We know an ounce of prevention, worth a pound of the cure. Those are the things that create early diagnosis, early catches, keep things from snowballing to become those big acute matters that you're facing down that treatment plan that you don't know what to do and how to solve for that financially. And that's a huge foundation of where we start. But we also believe that something that's a big gap that's been missing in the market is the space between well care and, let's say, the real big emergencies and acute, your ER visits. What about all the things that are kind of those minor areas in primary care, those ear cytologies, those chronic allergy issues or skin conditions, that cut that needs to get sutured up before, that vomiting and diarrhea that needs to get seen and not sit on for 4 days. I think that's to me where a big part of the gap was missing with traditional solutions that are out there. And so our goal is to try and build plans that meet both of those. They don't solve everything, but they're structured in a flexible way that covers well care and some non-well care, but in the general practice or primary care setting. So they kind of create a little umbrella there to support pet parents and vets and give them price predictability, and ultimately lead to better compliance, improve the access across the board.
Yeah, and that was probably an oversimplification on my end to make you akin to wellness, because you're right. In the subscription model, and maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on this, you pay a monthly fee, and that includes vet visits. So you aren't paying that office visit fee to walk in the door, which I think is a big barrier for a lot of people because, in this day and age, I know, and I say this all the time, when I adopted Peony almost 9 years ago, it was $65 for an office visit at my vet. It is now closer to 100. And they do my vet is great. They do everything they can to, make sure that, even though I have insurance, they treat me very well, and I'm sure they treat their other clients very well. As my most recent instance, I was at Super Zoo. Peony was boarded. I came home. She had stress diarrhea, right? She was with my ex, and she had to take her to the vet, and then I came and followed up, and the vet was like, "I'm 99% sure this is just stress-related diarrhea." We gave her a fecal. The fecal came back clean, and my ex had brought her to the vet while I was away. I came back. I went in, followed up. They only charged me for the fecal. And I don't have a subscription plan with them. But
Right.
because I have pet insurance, I don't worry about going, because I know that worst case scenario, I am looking at my deductible and my monthly fee. And I think that's very similar to what you're providing, and really kind of helps address that gap between someone who hasn't had pet insurance since the day they got their pet. And because my first project in pet animal health was doing a market landscape of the pet insurance space.
Yeah.
Back in 2009, when it was a very nascent industry. And, I said I didn't have a dog at that time. I'd never had a dog, but I said, if I ever get a dog, I'm going to have pet insurance. But I'm part of that 4% of the pet owning population that has pet insurance. There's another 96% out there that really treats going to the vet as a cost avoidance model. You look
Yep.
at it, it's like, okay, it's going to be $100 for me to walk in the door. And then if they do a test, if they need to do blood work, that's probably another 250 to 300. If they need to do an x-ray, add another, 300, 400 on top of that. So you're looking at close, if they need to do any type of diagnostic beyond walking in the door, you're looking at like, $1,000. And for a lot of people, that isn't sustainable. I think statistics show 70% of families in this country can't afford an unexpected $400 expense.
Hmm.
And I don't believe we should be saying that those people shouldn't be able to have a pet. I don't think we need to make sure people can care for their pets appropriately. That's why we have adoption fees. That's why we go through screening processes, why breeders will interview people before selling a dog. They want to make sure it's going to a good home, but at the same time, life is tight, and while people will oftentimes not skimp on their pets' food, they'll keep them on premium diets. um, there is that, maybe it's not that bad, or maybe the diarrhea will go away, or it's just a little cut. I'm sure I could clean it up myself. Does it really need to be looked at? And
Hmm.
you think about it, when you have health insurance, when your kids have health insurance, there's never, if you're even a little bit unsure, you go to the doctor. You don't wait. You might wait a day, and but if you're worried, you go. And for so many people, I think that's not the case with the vet, because there is that stigma of, this is going to cost me a lot of money.
Hmm.
And I think if you have that unlimited access, you can go to the vet as many times as you want. You can work with them to manage cost. They're getting a predictable revenue stream of, okay, I'm going to get much per month from the subscription plan. And then maybe you pair that with accident insurance, which is available to anyone. There's no pre-existing conditions with accidents, right? It,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you would have a pretty comprehensive care plan and solution, even if you didn't get pet insurance right when your dog when you adopted your dog or cat, or got your dog or cat as a kitten or a puppy.
Sure.
Um, so
Yeah. I think there's, sorry, I think there's you hit on like so many good points there. And one of the things that stuck with me as you were kind of talking that I want to go back to, I think we could, man, you could talk about all these topics for, an hour apiece, but is the first thing I kind of highlight, I think, is what you mentioned, which is a really good point, using this example of your dog going to getting boarded while you were gone. And there's two sides to that story, right? There's the pet owner side and the pet parent side, and then there's the vet relationship side. And we would maintain at PetCentric that one of the most core problematic issues, you've got education, people, pet health costs differently than it used to. Having a cat or dog looks different now. Part of that's because of availability of new technology, new diagnostics, new pharmacy, things that weren't available 50 years ago. Well, now pet parents are facing kind of this ethical dilemma of, these things are available. So do you really say no to them? So what people do is they kind of ostrich, as I say, they ostrich and they just say, well, I won't go in. And some of this kind of comes down to, I think, an archaic payment model in this industry at large. So, how do we buy pet health care? We buy it on an a la carte basis. It is line by line. It is, you talked about this example, fecal, exam, maybe you've got a maybe additional diagnostic in there, and we buy things on an a la carte basis. As consumers, we are moving away from buying things on an a la carte basis. Where do we do that still? We do it at the grocery store, we do it at clothing store, but when it comes to healthcare and when it comes to a lot of things, streaming services, other types of subscription models, we're moving away from that. Consumers want price predictability, and we want bundled products. That's how we want to buy. It smooths us from a cash perspective, a budget perspective. We have some economic crises, to your point, in this country where, 70% people can't afford a $400 unexpected bill. Well, guess what? That's a la carte vet care. And so who loses out on that? The pet loses out on that. So the first thing, for me is you got to start looking at how we access care differently. And I think it starts with, bundling concepts. So we can go into the insurance piece too and what separates those different models. But when we talk about primary care, we should be looking at it as a bundle because there's pressure on both sides when you're on a la carte basis. One, consumers tend to price shop more on you. So spending is more fragmented than it's ever been. People are buying in 6, 7, 8 different places for their pet. They're not going to their vet anymore. And the vet feels intense pressure under that a la carte model. So they want to be a good vet. They want you, they want your loyalty. They care about you. So in that situation, like you said, they probably waived something. They probably waived an exam or they just charged for the fee or because they want to satisfy and they know it's that a la carte piece. If they had a bundle where they bundled a bunch of services together for the year, which is how we're structured, some well care, some flexible for non-well care, they would say, hey, let's access that bundle because we're having some stress-based diarrhea. These are the things that can be under that bundle, that she can get seen to. They're not as much pressure to give away something, to price cut something. And then you have peace of mind of, I don't have to maybe get into that a la carte debate with them of, oh my gosh, am I going to have to add on a diagnostic blood panel? And that peace of mind plus that predictability, in my mind, that's the piece. That's where the access then piece starts to improve because it's like that a little bit of a sigh of relief on both sides. It's got to economically work. It has to make sense financially for both sides. But that peace of mind factor, that then drives behavior. Okay, I'm going to come in and get seen because I got it.
You're sort of incentivized to use it at a certain point.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
if you paid that money in, if you're paying that subscription for a package of services, you're going to make sure you get your money's worth, right? And that drives more regular vet visits, and that allows vets to catch problems earlier. That prevents problems from spiraling into, you catch a, tooth abscess early on, and it's a much more
Absolutely.
treatable condition. That you catch a lump, and detect cancer earlier. It's, again, much more treatable, much more cost effective to treat. Um, it's, but it gets back to that like regular care and you know, keeping up with your vaccinations, keeping up with your preventatives. If you don't have your pet on heartworm medication, heartworm kills dogs. It's a very sad reality. I mean, not I feel like I'm always throwing in personal anecdotes about Peony, but I mean, she is the inspiration for this podcast. And when we adopted her, we were told she was heartworm negative, and we, went to the vet, initial well visit, checkup. Week after we adopted her, she got her vaccines, got her Brevecto, got her Interceptor. That night she starts throwing up like crazy. And it wasn't until a few months later that we realized we thought it was a vaccine reaction. Um, it wasn't until a few months later, we were working with a trainer and they touched her back end and she had a kind of startled, snappy reaction. And that was the trainer was like, you should probably get that checked out at the vet. It seems like she might have some pain. Turns out she's just very sensitive to being touched in her back end, but we went through a whole thing of, they thought she had pulled her groin muscle, so we did laser therapy and, again, benefits of pet insurance, right? But at the end, after a few weeks of treatment, the vet was like, I just want to do a snap test just to make sure this isn't some tick-borne thing. And Lyme and Ehrlichia all came back negative, but she was heartworm positive. And it was, when the shelter had tested her, the microfilariae weren't fully developed enough to register as a positive heartworm test. But if we hadn't done that, she would have died. I mean, if you let that go another few months, it's going to be, past the point of being treatable. And I mean, as it was not a fun process to treat her for heartworm.
No.
She, had to, go through the 2 rounds of amiticide. She had to be, no more than 5-minute walks, twice a day for a period of like 3 months. But again, it was because we didn't have that fear of taking her to the vet
Hmm.
that got caught. And same thing when she is a cancer survivor. She had melanoma 5 years ago, and I found a lump, and I've never, I've taken her to the vet more times because I found lumps that have ended up being, lipomas or, uh, other benign, but this one came back, well, it's melanoma, and they cut it out, and she's going to be 11 if the shelter got her age right. She'll be 11 in December. But it's so, for the 96% of pet parents that don't have pet insurance, if you don't have something that incentivizes you to go to the vet, you're it's human nature. You're going to look at it as, I don't, do I need to spend that money? Like, I don't, people like to spend money, but when they spend money, they want to spend it on things that they see immediate returns on. They don't, nobody likes getting a big medical bill, whether it's for them or for their pet or, um, it's not something you look forward to going to the vet, or to your doctor.
No,
Um,
it's not at all. I mean, and I think you just the story highlights where the intersection of you're talking about two things. You're really talking about peace of mind thing. What happens when something goes wrong and I have a peace of mind? So you're part of that 4% with insurance. And again, we're in the camp of insurance has an important role for that piece. But then you're also talking about behavior modification and compliance of the things that lead to those early identification and how you see that. And one of the challenges of kind of distinctions for pet parents and vets, honestly, that I think is still a very big area of opportunity for education in the market is what are the differences out there of these different things. So traditionally, pet insurance works really well if something happens, right? So you're paying a premium in the event of something happening.
right.
You're transferring that risk if in the event you have melanoma, in the event you have different things. And that is the ultimate kind of peace of mind. So I have insurance on a couple of my dogs, I have insurance on my horses. Longtime believer that pet insurance has a place. But what happens we see is that you've talked hit on the topic of people want somewhat of immediate gratification for what they're doing and their spending. And so the problem with pet insurance, and I think why you struggle to in getting long-term compliance with pet insurance, is you're putting a premium towards something that might or might not happen in the future. And what we say is it's important to be there. There's a really strong adjacency, but your first dollar, from our perspective, bias of course, but your first dollar of pet care should be put towards something that you need this year. And that you're going to have a high value proposition of it, and it's going to help you understand what needs to be done for your pet every day. Even looking at a subscription care plan or at any kind of bundled solution, when you get a new puppy or kitten, that can be an education of, oh man, like it's going to cost me on average, let's say if I want to do everything that they want me to do, this is going to be $1,300 a year. Okay, people just don't think of that. You go and they adopt from the Humane Society, wherever they are, and they often are able to get really cheap adoption rates. They might even get some free prevention that goes with them. They go out the door, they go to that first then next visit, and it's a $400 bill. So part of what, so there's an education piece that vets can leverage care plans of what does good pet ownership look like, and then start modifying that behavior early on and put your dollars towards the things that are going to happen in the primary care setting. They're not all going to be prevention based. They might be some, hey, sick, we might need to do an ultrasound here, we might need to do a UA here, but they're kind of in that predictable, what I would say, kind of primary care window of things that happen. And that people spending in that way, we think is really the foundation of good pet care. And then the last thing on that we can come back to, or you probably have thoughts on this too, is use that example if you go in and someone has that $400 bill. I think that the key of having predictability in a subscription model is that you're paying over that 12 months of that annual plan, but you might consume $500 of services that day. And what that allows in our model, that allows two things. One, it allows them to access more in the subscription than they've paid in. So you're not having to come back 3 or 4 times to kind of cobble together what you need. This is what we need to do today. And you can say yes. The pet parent can say yes. Yes, I can do that blood work. I can do that because it's my care plan. Even if they just signed up for their care plan that day. And on the vet side, they get then paid as they render services. So they're getting that revenue right away. So they're getting that $500. The pet parent gets to use that $500, and then the subscription smooths over time. And that hurdle is one of the biggest satisfiers that we try and meet. That hurdle in that visit at that moment.
So I sign up for a subscription through PetCentric with my vet, and I have a predicted monthly fee of X. But next day I go in and I need that $500 worth of care. Do I then have to come up with if I was budgeting for, say, $60 a month, so $720 a year, and then I get, $500 on the first day, do I prepay that $500 and then my monthly fee is now $220, like $20, $19 a month for the rest of the year?
Yeah, great question. I think hopefully it's a little simpler than that. That's what we're aiming for. But fantastic question. So I think on average, the way to think about it is our subscriptions are all built and customized to an individual vet hospital. So, we're trying to be responsive to what that vet needs and what their typical pet parents look like. Some vets are focusing on acupuncture and laser therapy. They want that to be included. Some vets are very focused on, hey, I'm really pushing my dentistry practice, et cetera. So there's some variation there from the clinical side. But on average, our subscription model has two main components. And we're just going to do easy numbers to make it simple. Then they're close enough. 50% of the subscription are generally the things that you think about in that preventative category, that wellness category. Is there pharma included? Maybe, maybe not, based on the vet, the exams, your fecals, your snap tests, that kind of stuff, maybe your annual blood work. And then generally about 50% of the value of the subscription, and that subscription value can range by region, vet style, vet pricing, all these different factors, is what we call a pet FSA, or flexible spend, or in-hospital credit. So let's say you're coming in for a sick visit. You sign up for your subscription, you got a brand new puppy, your puppy's never going to be sick, of course, and then all of a sudden starts vomiting and something's going on. You come in that next day. To your point, you generally should be able to use your subscription in a flexible way. You could maybe use your diagnostic or your blood panel for that. And you might have, let's say, $500 that is there available day one to go towards that sick visit. So you could use everything that's available in your subscription plan and the amount that is in your subscription plan, which does kind of vary based on hospital, towards whatever you need to that day. There's no reimbursement. You're not having to come up with it and then go through a reimbursement. It's transactionalist when you use it with your vet who has their care plan. The time now, subscription care plans, they can't contemplate the $2,000 bill, or it wouldn't probably be palatable to most people. So we look at average sick visits for that hospital, average trends for that hospital, and we try and build their flexible spend around what we think will hit the majority of some of the most frequent things they see that come in the primary care space that's in that sick bucket category. And so let's say your pet flexible spend in your subscription covered had $500 still, and your bill was $600. The $500 is transactionalist, and you would then just pay the $100 extra. And then you could supplement your insurance if you wanted to, but there's no reimbursement. Your subscription doesn't change, none of that. You can use everything that's in it, and then you layer on top.
Do you run into any issues with people like maxing out their FSA early in their subscription and then trying to cancel, or?
Sure. Sure you do. But here's what I would say about that. For way of backstory, my in-laws are now retired small, large animal multi-practice veterinarians. And so when PetCentric was being built, it had to be an economic model that worked for both sides. Nothing makes a pet parent more upset that they come in to use their subscription. You know what? You actually can't use that today because it's a wellness plan only. Oh, your pet's sick? Well, you're on plan, but we don't have a solution for you. All of that will be out of pocket. Huge dissatisfier
Yep.
and, and not a value prop for the pet parent. And I think that's why wellness as a term has gotten a lot of bad rap, some unfair in the market at large. On the vet side, the vet cannot be in a position where they deliver $500 of revenue service and then have to wait on that subscription to come in over the year. Most of them are cash-based accounting, tight margins. They need that revenue that day. So, our approach on that is the economic model has to benefit both parties. And so that's why we're structured that way, in that we pay the vet as services are rendered and the pet parent really can essentially overutilize. Now, pet parents, my approach is most people want to do the right thing. That's how they're structured. They want to do the right thing. And so we try and create a lot of flexibility. You need to change your payment dates, you need to catch up, all that kind of stuff. There's always a handful of people who look at models and they say, how can I leverage this and use this and abuse that? And we have that. And and so what we do is we spend time, trying to obviously mitigate that risk and working with those pet parents. And, if maybe they don't get to sign up for a care plan again in the future. But I would say that our data has shown us over the past several years that the good has outweighed the bad across the board with the pet parent behavior, satisfaction. And, unfortunately, some of that's just a cost of doing business when you're trying to deliver a really good product that does it differently and kind of trying to disrupt the way we've traditionally thought about it. So yes, it does, but it doesn't keep me up at night. That's the good thing.
Okay. And would you say, out of the hospitals that you've developed subscription plans with, how many of them are including like unlimited visits with that subscription model? Or is it, still billed per service?
So what's cool about it is, we believe that you got to start by going in really deep with your hospitals from a finance perspective. So this is not just our business is not just like a technology piece that you bolt on. Yes, we're technology enabled. That's how we deliver our product. Pet parents have an app, hospitals have their portal, but ultimately for us, you got to have it has to be financially sound. It has to have value props. So we have to understand how your pet parents are behaving right now. What are they really looking for? Like, you might think they want this, but in reality, the data says they're doing different. So they want different things. So we try and dig in really deep with the data to figure out what's the starting point and what's the strategy for this hospital. And I would say there's a lot of right ways to do it. Yeah, there's a few definite wrong ways to do it, but there's a lot of right ways to do it. And so unlimited exams, that's a great example. Everyone has a different philosophy around that. We really try and lean into what do we think is the value prop that's going to be most important to your patients, and how do you tackle that? And is it unlimited exams? Is that your strategy? Is your strategy going to be instead incentivizing something else? You're trying to build your dental practice so you don't give unlimited exams, but you offer a discount for members who are care plan members on dental. We really try and work with what's the clinical and business strategy for that hospital. Some hospitals don't have the white space on their book to give unlimited exams. Other hospitals are trying to increase their frequency, and their frequency and new patient flow is most important. Those are great candidates for unlimited exams. There's a lot of different ways to do it. I think you've got to have the right intersection of what do your average pet parents really want? Do you understand your pet parents? We see a lot of vets who they think they do, but they really don't have a pulse on their average pet parent at their hospital. What do they want? What's going to be value prop for them? What makes sense for you clinically and financially? And then ultimately trying to bundle that together to create, a win-win. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but I think the days of it's got to look like this, like you've got to do unlimited exams and they've all got to be discounted at 100%. We take the approach of you've got to build it to make it work for you, and then meet your pet parents where they are. So we have vets do both. To your point, we see a lot of interest with also vets adding in urgent care exams as they're building out urgent care elements into their hospital and adding basically urgent care exposure and access as part of their care plan. That's super cool and innovative. It seems to be attracting a lot of patients.
Do you see televet as a part of any of these models? Or are you partnering with any televet services? do you have any insurance partnerships in the works? Because, I know you mentioned, that there is a gap between
Yes.
what you both cover. And, I know like personally, my insurance will cover, routine wellness visits. I can bring, that goes against my deductible, but,
Sure.
but it will not cover vaccines and it won't cover a lot of, it won't cover the SNAP tests and it won't cover a fecal. Um,
Right.
so, is that in the roadmap for Pet Centric, or where where do you see that falling in?
Um, Absolutely. For a lot there. First of all, we'll talk about the insurance piece first. So yes, so we have a partnership with an insurance aggregator that we often will stand up. So when pet parents go into the portal, into their Pet Centric app, and then once they're subscribers, they'll also then get some insurance messaging because it's about education. Hey, did you know you're being a great pet parent? You have a care plan for your year of health. You are headed in the right direction. What happens in that car hit situation or the melanoma, what is that? So we try and do a lot of education around accident and major medical. I'm biased for a lot of reasons, but as we all are, but I think that insurance works best in that space. It works really, really well in that accident and major medical space. And so a perfect scenario is someone has a care plan as their foundation, their primary care coverage, and then they have an insurance piece that's over that for that major medical. I think, insurance has tried to, and obviously they are actively, insurance companies are pushing, different wellness add-ons to the product. I think it's confusing a lot of times for pet parents because wellness is inherently different than what insurance is supposed to do, and so people use the word insurance and all they know is to compare it to human healthcare insurance for good or bad. They don't know the difference. And I think, the way that insurance is written and structured for pets is very, very, very different. To your point, you
P&C
can't have
insurance.
it right. It is right. For
It,
those
it,
of the
it,
insurance nerds out there like us, it's
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 the
the
same as
same
what you would have for your car or your
for
home.
your jet ski.
Pet,
That's right.
pet,
Say you're
pets
you're
are property in the eyes of the law, and
that's right.
you
That's
know,
right. And
so there is
so
this huge disconnect where we think of preventative in human healthcare. It's like, of course, my annual physical is covered. Of course, my vaccine is
uh-huh.
covered. That's
Right.
not the case with pet insurance. It's
Yeah.
very much, you know, you have a car that's in clean condition, and is without body damage, and you can insure it. But if,
That's right.
it has a fender ripped off, you can't then insure it and get the fender replaced. Uh,
That's the perfect analogy. It is. It's property coverage. And again, there's good and bad of that. It's not one size fits all, but I think a lot of people buy insurance. They're not as well versed as someone like you. They buy pet insurance, they get this wellness add-on and they're like, "Well, wait a minute, why wouldn't my vaccines be covered, right? I bought wellness insurance." So it's challenging in the market because it's so much about that education front and helping pet parents and educating vets. So, vets are being inundated knowing that they need new solutions. They need new solutions to give to their pet parents. They've got to find out new creative ways because people are buying differently, behaving different, fractured spending, their compliance on preventative meds super low, their compliance on all these different areas they want to see increase. Okay, well, you got to then offer your services in a different way. And you'll talk to them, we'll spend time to them. Okay, what are all the things that are out there right now in the market that you offer? And they themselves really struggle with differentiating between how insurance works versus well care or care plans, et cetera. And so as this industry is moving as a whole, there's so much that's going to still need to happen around education to help because ultimately people need to find things that work for them and that work for their pet parent, that work for their pet, that work for their financial situation, that work for that. And so part of us is, our journey in the years ahead is going to be constantly in that education front. So yes, we're big proponents of insurance. We have a partnership there on the telehealth side. Telehealth is really interesting. We are really up for whatever our vets want to do in that space. So we do not have a proprietary telehealth relationship with anyone. I think that the future is absolutely, who knows what's going to come of the future of this. I mean, clearly we were just talking about this before we went live of like, no one meets in person anymore. We meet just through our computer screens all day long. So clearly, we know telehealth and what happened with COVID with telehealth is, leading indicator of that interest. If our vets build care plans and they have a telehealth partnership already set up and they allow the care plan to be used for telehealth access as well, all day long, they can do that, totally vet determined. And we have some that do that. And then the other big strategic partnership that we have that I think is just kind of give a shout out, it's been really satisfier is we also have a poison control hotline relationship with ASPCA.
Oh, cool.
So our pet parents who have a subscription, they get access to one consult a year through the ASPCA relationship that we have.
And that's a
$75
value right there.
And they have their it's actually, it's more than that. It's changed.
Oh,
but it's changed. But they
been a few years since I've had to call in, but
and no one wants to call in. No one wants to call in. But those are the cool things that you kind of layer in as value prop that again, you don't think you're going to need it, but if it's there, man, you're happy you had it. And we have so many vets who just told us, man, someone gets in there and I really need them to call poison control and they won't do it. So it's like, okay, care plan could help with that. Care plan would help. And so I think we'll continue to layer on partnerships as the market tells us what pet parents want and what hospitals need to help them have a lower stress and deliver their model better.
Yeah. Well, I think it's awesome. And Heather, I know we're coming to the end of our time, but I do want to, throw out that, I think what you're doing is so important, not just for the pet parents and, driving that regular access to care, but tying it back to, this whole issue of surrender and economic euthanasia, the better care you're able to take care of your pet, the less likely you're going to be in that scenario. And, although we launched the Angel Fund, I keep saying, this isn't meant to be a replacement for responsible pet ownership. It's not meant to be a replacement for pet insurance. It's meant to step in those situations where people are facing a really difficult financial decision and, the Angel Fund is there to help in those cases. But we'd be remiss if we weren't trying to educate people. And it's so important for the vets too, because if we think about on the vet side, you mentioned earlier, the moral distress and contribution to veterinary burnout and the alarmingly high suicide rate in the veterinary population is driven a lot by those cases where they know they could help, but the finances aren't there. And so whether that's the Angel Fund stepping in to make that care possible, or whether it's through more people adopting pet insurance or subscription plans, things to, the real goal is you don't ever want to be in a situation where you're making a choice between your pet's health and your pocketbook. And so whether that's through better budgeting or whether that's, I think it does just come down to basic financial responsibility and, making sure that you have a solution, whether that's a subscription plan with pet insurance, whether that's just pet insurance, whether that's catastrophic care, finding something that works for you as a pet parent. And, and for vets that might be considering, adding on a subscription plan. I don't know how many hospitals you've partnered with to date, Heather, but I would encourage vets to go and check out PetCentric and give Heather a call. I'm sure there's plenty of reference hospitals out there that she could put you in touch with, and they could tell you about the benefits of having a plan like this.
Yeah, we happy to. We go East Coast to West Coast. In the US, we're about 10 states. We support nearing 40 hospitals. Most of those are independents. Not all are independents, so we can support both. But I would say, we definitely see the need in the independent market in particular, as they have to think about how to do things differently. Things are getting really competitive, and they're not just getting competitive from a business side, but as you talk about, the kind of ethical and moral dilemma and fatigue and emotional fatigue that comes with that. And it's really daunting when you look at some of the stats around mental health for vets, and they are sub some of the stats that you would expect. You would expect an ER doc to have higher suicide rates than your veterinarian, and the data suggests otherwise. And I think a lot of it comes down to this really the crossroads and the intersection of economic concerns and price concerns. And there's a lot of solutions that are out there for vets to think about doing it differently. And in turn, there's a lot of solutions for pet parents to think about doing it differently. But I think the summary is, the way that it was done 50 years ago isn't going to work and, now and 50 years into the future. And so what I would encourage, particularly on the vet side, is take 5 hours of heads up time a month to say, where am I? Should I look at this? Should I explore these different things? And because there's a lot of different strategies out there that can make our vets more successful in the future. And they're not faced with these economic euthanasia. We're not going to be able to eliminate all of them, but when you add these different solutions together and angel funds and different financing tools and different ways to drive compliance, I think in the aggregate, those things can support and improve where we need to go, that are a benefit to our veterinarians that we desperately need, and a benefit to pet parents as well. So appreciate you having me on so much. Yes, if any veterinarian is listening and is interested, you can just go petcentrichealth.com. There's a way to reach out to us directly there. We'd love to talk. And Peter, I appreciate you having us on and just continuing to help bring awareness to different solutions that are out there to support some of the topics that are near and dear to your heart. Being
thank you
responsible
so
pet
much
owner.
for your support of the Angel Fund Open, which we have coming up in less than a month now. So
Absolutely.
we're really excited to seed the fund, and hopefully we're still recruiting golfers, but at the very least we will have a banquet that night. If there are golfers out there, we have about a week left to get signups up to make the golf portion of the event happen. But at the very least, we're going to have a banquet, and we'll be kicking off this fund and be saving lives and keeping families together. And so, Heather, thank you so much for PetCentric's support, and we really appreciate everybody who's contributed. And looking forward to a great event. And so, thank you for joining me. On behalf of Heather, everyone, I'm Peter Kenseth with Petworking, and we'll talk again soon. Take care.